What's up, everybody? Welcome to Make Things Tiny. My name is Mick, and today's video is all about tiny house photos. I'm talking to Brent Heavener. Brent is the author of Tiny House, Live Small, Dream Big. It's this book right here. It's actually one of my favorite books on tiny houses. It's one of the only two tiny house books that I own, and it's all about different photos for tiny houses, different designs, anything you could think of. It's a fantastic book. So I'm going to make several plugs for this book because I think it's wonderful, and I think it gives you a chance to really sort of like see the movement in pictures, the tiny house movement and the industry as a whole. So I'm gonna sit down and talk about Brent, what sort of like led them to creating tiny house content, the book, the whole thing, their advice for people going tiny. So this is a great video for anyone, regardless of the phase that they're in their tiny house journey. It's just going to be a fun conversation. So before I jump into it, for those of you who are new to the channel, please do take time to subscribe. When you hit subscribe, it helps me grow the community, helps me to continue to do what I love, which is making great videos around tiny houses for you guys. Tap the notification bell so you find out when I drop new videos. I drop new videos every single week. So yeah, let's talk about tiny house photos. Let's do this. All right, so I'm here today with Brent Heavener. Thank you so much, Brent, for being on the channel. Brent's the author of Tiny House, Live Small, Dream Big. I love your book. I'm excited to chat with you today. If you don't mind just taking a second and talking a little bit about yourself, like what got you interested in tiny homes, and we'll just go from there.
Thanks, Mick. It's good to be on the show here today. Yeah, so I've been interested in tiny homes for probably about 10 years. So it started when my family, we're quite an eclectic family. We've lived in an old church once. We lived in a 5-story house that was going to be condemned. We've lived in all kinds of homes, and so I just grew up traveling a lot. By the time I was 15 years old, I lived in 7 different states and 11 different houses. So grew up in a lot of different places, and my dad has always been a very counterculture, out of the system thinking sort of guy. And so he just ingrained that in us, whether it's been our spiritual walk or physically, moving places or creatively. So growing up, I was just kind of a mover and a shaker and used to moving around in different places. And I remember I was about 16 years old, and at this point we were living at my grandma's house. We were in Kentucky, and we were sort of homeless in a way. We were trying to find a place to live, so we were just there as a pit stop. And he sent me on my email. He sent me this article of these homes that were made from shipping containers. And at this time, I was into social media a lot. I would do a lot of social media marketing and stuff on Twitter. Now it's called X, and so I would start these accounts and try to grow them with friends of mine. And so I just found these tiny homes and like these container homes, and I just started posting them on Twitter just because they looked really, really cool, and like it was just a passion project. So I just posted them, and then it just like lit on like a wildfire. I'm a millennial, right? So at that time, this was probably 2014, maybe 2015. There wasn't a whole lot of content out as far as tiny homes, and there were a few guys and some books out, but there wasn't a lot of like direct content, like immediate, on the go content for millennials. And so I just started posting them, and it just took off, and it got super popular. Then moved to Instagram in 2015.
Okay, that's cool. That's like a really interesting way to get involved in them, just sort of like, which makes sense for the book because it's like you were sent a picture and then you sort of like use photos of tiny houses to sort of like grow your channel. What did you end up doing with Instagram? Like, did you like keep that one? Like, do you still have that account you created with Instagram too?
Yeah, so that really blew up. That almost had it to 1 million followers, and
Oh, wow.
that's where the opportunity to write that book for Penguin Random House came out of,
Okay.
and some other really cool opportunities. Worked with HBO, even I don't really support what they do all the time, and just a bunch of other stuff. And so I ended up, ended up moving abroad shortly after I started the Instagram and just started working more with my community that I'm in. And so
Mhm.
slowly the passion for it had stopped. And so ended up someone else is managing it now. Another some friends of mine, and it's still at Tiny House. That's still the handle. And
Okay.
they're still posting content and using it to sort of leverage their like tiny home brand to serve the tiny house community.
That's cool.
Tinyhouse.com.
So,
Yeah, so they have the handle or the domain tinyhouse.com. So
okay. So did someone like approached you? Like, were you already sort of like thinking, let me take the stuff that I'm doing and like put it in a book, or like what was that sort of like process? Like, what inspired you to sort of like go ahead and be like, okay, let's put all this into a book, or like put some photos into a book?
yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. It was totally all credit to Yahweh, my creator. It was totally cool. So it was I was 20. I think I was 21 years old. Maybe I was 20, and July of 2017, I got two different emails. I got one email from the biggest publishing house in the world, and another email from I think maybe the second biggest.
Okay.
And they emailed me randomly, like in the same month in the same week, and I'm thinking, man, this must be some like must have conspired together, something like that. But
Yeah.
Penguin Random House ended up wanting me to just do this 250-page coffee table book. They just saw the work on Instagram and were really impressed with it. And so it was some time with negotiating the contract and just and a lot of work in putting it together. But it was so it was 2017 and 2018 is when I started working on it, contacting photographers, writing up um, the the um, the excerpts, and it was like an 8 month process um, of pretty hard work from like mid beginning to mid 2018 to late 2018, and then it was published in 2019,
Okay.
September of 2019.
Cool. Cool. What made you, which photos, like, how did you decide, like, which pictures to put in there? Because it's quite a lot of content. Like, was a lot of it from the at Tiny House Instagram, or, like, did people reach out to you, or, like, you reached out to people once you found out, like, hey, I'm going to do this big project? Like, how did that sort of work?
Yeah, so the goal was to have content that wasn't already out there. The goal was to find
Okay.
content that I'd not posted on the account because if someone's not going to maybe buy a book if they can just scroll on Instagram and see it.
Yeah,
So
that's
at this
true.
point, I was like, it was pretty cutting edge. I'm like, hey, you know what? Like, I want to find the best. Like, I want to do the best. Like that. That's what I want to
Hmm.
present, and I'm working for the best of the best. The top publishing house. So that was the really fun part. I, I connected with there's one home that's in the book. At one point, it was going to be the cover, or that was my idea for it. But it was this home way up in Alaska, and I had just found I'd found it on an Instagram, and the dude hadn't been active for like forever, and he would like it was super hard to get a hold of him, but it was probably one of like the best images. And so I finally was able to get a hold of him, got the rights to it. Of course, like it had now not been published anywhere because it was the dude could barely get I could barely reach him. And so that was just a really good feeling, like having that photo up there. Because even though I wasn't out physically taking the photos, it was amazing because I love to support artists, I love to support
Right.
creatives, and it was like a way for me to pretty much get content out there from all these creatives, from all these photographers from all over the world, and to connect with these photographers and call them. Like it wasn't just email; like I would have a conversation with them and get to know them. And of course, the cover of the book is from a guy in Finland. A tiny house there and a photographer that's there, and there's homes in Patagonia and
Yeah.
all different kinds of places. So yeah, it was mainly finding homes that hadn't been posted anywhere. I don't know if there maybe it's just a few homes in the book that have been published on the account. Other than that, the majority have never been published on the account and been published anywhere. That was my goal, was to
Yeah.
find homes that hadn't been put out there before.
Mhm. I think that's probably what makes it such a fun book to look at and sort of like read the different captions and stuff like that too. Because I went through it in like one sitting. Like I remember like because I only own two tiny house books. I own one on like building, like tiny house building for dummies, and then I have your book. And I remember reading it, like looking through it, and I just went through it in like a few hours. Is I love pictures and I love tiny houses, and I think that's one of the things that makes it so captivating because each photo is so different from the next, and they're all different houses that you've never seen before. Just like architecturally, like different designs, like the background, like all of it is just very different. I don't think there's anything else out there like that, and it is not the same as when you sort of it's not the same as when you're scrolling. Maybe it's because I still like books. But like I think it's a different experience to sort of like go through and like flip through the pages and like take your time, because when you're scrolling through, you're not really like you don't like stay with it in the same way. It's kind of quick. It's a quick thing when you're scrolling on Instagram.
Yeah, you're totally right. Like in a world where literally technology is taking over, and we're doing this over
Mhm.
technology, and we all know our screen time, notification
Yep,
that comes
that's
up,
true.
and we're like, ooh, low key convicted over here, right? Every time it comes
Yep.
up, and we're like, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. In a world where that's dominating, it's so I didn't realize how how good it was to
Hmm.
create something physical and tangible, and
Hmm.
to take what we see on social media, these homes that we scroll in, it's like honestly, it's like architecture porn, or it's like it's eye candy. It's
Yeah,
immediate
yeah, yeah.
gratification, and it loses. Right? It's just that
Hmm.
millisecond of viewing something. Take that, and then to physically have it on paper, I think is healthy emotionally. I think it's
Hmm.
healthy with our minds. I think it's healthy mentally, and I think it's healthy societally. For us
Oh yeah.
to have something physical and to get back to the arts instead of just an instant
Mhm.
you know, you know, Instagram or TikTok porn in a way, if I can use that language.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, I agree. I think that also it helps you slow down too, because I think we are moving too fast. And I think that's something I love about the tiny house movement. It is about slowing down and like reflecting on your life and thinking about whether or not you want to keep working your corporate job or you want to quit it and go live in a mountain somewhere and, paint or take pictures or something like that. So I think that just the fact that you created a hard copy book also aligns with the movement where it's like take a few hours on like a Saturday or Sunday and just like sit outside and just look at all of these different photos and like find inspiration here. So I think that's what I liked about it because like that's what I like about reading something hard copy as opposed to looking at pictures on your computer or on your phone. So yeah, I think that makes sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there a favorite one? I know you've like taken in so much tiny house content and you've looked at so many different photos. Like, is there a
Hmm.
favorite house of the ones in the book or like a favorite like story of yours in terms of like the different people that you interacted with in that
Hmm.
process?
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, I have so many. Um, there's so many. But yeah, I mean, so the front cover is up in Finland. It's by
Hmm.
an architect named Robin Falk. And it's called the Nola Cabin. And so the
Okay.
guy that took the photos, his name's Jonas or Jonas. It's super small, but it's more of like a kind of an architectural experiment in a way, where
Hmm.
I don't know if it was the government of Finland or an NGO, that ended up uh, like putting it on this sort of by the shore and where people can get out and check it out. That was a really cool one. Um, and yeah, there's oh man, there's so many. There's so many. There's like I I I love the ones of families, where families have homes, because sometimes it
Yeah.
looks like, oh, it's just a single person or just a couple. But there were multiple vans, like there were buses and vans. Ben and Mandy, I think it was, have a bus that I have in there, and they've had multiple kids. There's a photo in there of their bus, and it has a little baby on the left hand side. Um, so I think it's cool because it just really it sort of destroys the maybe notion or idea that it's like, oh, I'm single, so I need, or like if I have a family I can't do it, when in reality,
Hmm.
like, if you're husband and wife and you're bumping each other all the time, conflict resolution is just going to happen.
Yeah,
You're not
that's
going to be
true.
able to keep things hidden for a while, and
Yeah.
and you're going to get
Very
really
true.
close to your kids. You're probably going to want to smack them at times, or throw them outside the bus, uh but you'll really grow tight as a family, instead of like
Mm.
a five bedroom house where each person is in their own room. You barely see each other, and they're on the phone all the time. And if they're together, for dinner, for lunch as a family, then they're still on their phone. And
Yeah.
so it's really healthy with the way that our world is going.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think again, it just makes people think more about what matters to them and what they want, which I think we could use more of. And I think especially for us as like millennials too, like I think we're thinking about it a lot because we're thinking about how we have to worry about like how to pay for retirement and like what are we going to do with our lives? Like what's it going to look like in the next 10 or 15 or 20 years? These things are changing so rapidly for the negative in this country. So I think that's another piece of it too. Have you ever like sort of like thought about going tiny yourself? You ever like lived in a tiny house? Like, what are your thoughts on the tiny house movement, like, in general, or if, like for you personally?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, it's funny because I've been in the townhouse movement for years, and um, everybody's always like, are you building a house? You building a house, and kind of thing. And so where I live in Central America, I live in what I call the tree house. It's got a kind of a cement bottom where I'm at right now, but a wooden top, and it's underneath mango trees. So there's 21 different
Oh,
mango
cool.
trees around, and built by the founder of this little village. Um, and so it's definitely small, it's definitely small, but I'm planning on breaking ground on a house in July.
Cool.
And so yeah, I'm planning on doing I want to do more of a kind of a Nordic style home with like
Yeah.
the recessed gutters. I'm looking at that. I'm also looking at just like a cubed home, um,
Mhm.
all built out of steel. And I want to be
Okay.
able to move it afterward. And so the law around here is it's like 12 and a half feet high is the
Mhm.
highest you can do it. Um, so yeah, I'm breaking ground in July to answer your question.
Cool. That's super exciting. That's
Yeah.
awesome. You said you want to make it out of steel?
Yes. Yeah. So the
That's
frame out
cool.
of steel, I would
Mhm.
do like sheet metal for the side and for the roof. Um,
Mhm.
and probably I would do it to where there's space in between the insulation and this in the steel to where the heat can easily escape, and I'd have like a vent like all around for the heat to come out. Um,
Cool. How
and
big do you
then
think it'll be?
I'm looking at like 18 by 26.
Okay. That's not too bad.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So it'll be um, that's under 500 square feet, I think. Gets in
Okay.
the 400s. I'm doing quick math. I was homeschooled, so I don't do math like that in my head. Sometimes it,
No,
it fails.
yeah, no. That's awesome. That's really exciting. That's in a few months too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah,
That's awesome for you. Well,
yeah.
what advice would you have for someone who's considering going tiny after all of your experiences and all the people we've talked to, and now you're gonna build your own tiny house soon too? What advice would you have for someone else?
2 words. Do it.
Yeah.
It's the best advice I can give is we've all as a kid jumped off of a diving board, and it's literally the scariest thing in our life until we do it, and then we realize, oh, that's not too bad. And so the biggest thing with the tiny house movement is that people are just too scared. They're scared that they will miss their stuff. They're scared that they'll start doing it and they'll back out. They're scared of even what family thinks. They're scared of maybe their marriage or their kids and all that.
Yeah.
Maybe they're scared financially, and fear holds us back. Fear isolates us. So the best thing is to set a date and set a hard date and don't move on it.
It's true. Yeah, that's a good point. I like that. I like to make promises to myself when I know it's going to be something I'm like afraid to do because like I think you would feel pretty bad if you broke a promise to yourself. So that's what I do. Like that's what I started doing like a year and a half ago. I'm like I'm going to promise myself I'll do this, and then you can't back out of it because like you want to be true to yourself. You don't want to like go back on your word to yourself. So I think that's good. Speaking it out loud or like writing it down or like telling a friend or something is like a really great way to make sure you actually go through with it. But yeah, fear is huge. I think that's what's keeping most of us from living our lives the way we want to, which is unfortunate. I mean, I can see why. Like I've definitely waited too long to do some things sometimes, but yeah, I'm always excited after the fact, so it's definitely worth it. So it's great advice.
Yeah, and something else is that people are often scared that they will if they make a decision to go tiny, that they have to live tiny long term. They have to live
Hmm.
tiny forever. And there's this idea of like, oh, if I'm going tiny, then it's forever, or like I'm forever giving up this idea of having a bigger home. And the reality, which is not very popular, because I often get asked the question like, okay, Brent, like, what's the give us like the reality? How long do people stay in tiny homes? And sometimes I'll answer the truth. Sometimes it's 2 years, sometimes it's 4 years, sometimes it is longer, but the truth, and then often their thought is like, well, oh, that proves that tiny home living is not sustainable, that it's just a short term option, that people do it and they have a high, and then they get out of it, and they realize that it wasn't good, and that's I want to challenge that thought, and I want to challenge the fear that comes around going tiny, because we have this black and white mentality, this polarized mentality, and study shows that black and white thinking is self detrimental, And
Mhm.
so there's this idea that if you go tiny, you have to stay tiny, and that if you stop going tiny, then you give up, or
Yeah.
something like that. And it's really not that. It's simply the physical act of going more minimalist, and living in a smaller home, and the the um the mental and emotional freedom that comes from that. The physical act of that is simply to fix, is simply to make a remedy in the soul. It's simply
Mhm.
to fix an internal mental um, breakdown. It's simply once the mind comes into submission to the physical surroundings, your perspective changes. And
Yeah.
so if you go tiny for 2 years, say you're a single person, just working a job, and you're like, hey, you know what, I feel burnt out. I feel like there's something more in life. I feel like I know there's something more for me to do. I know I have a calling. I have a purpose. I know that I was created by a creator with a mission, with a purpose in life. And there's that fear of like, well, what if I go tiny, and then I only do it for a few years? And I say do it. That doesn't matter if you only do it for a few years.
Yeah.
Multiple people in my book, um, by the time the book came out, some of those, uh, not by the time it came out, but a little bit after that, some of those people had already moved out of their house, and they were on to other things. And so we look at it as a destination, but I look at it simply as a stepping stone.
Mhm. No, I agree. I think it's just about learning more about yourself. It doesn't really matter how long you do it. It's going to change your life even if you do it for 6 months. So I think that it's definitely worth it. And I've talked to people. I had someone on the channel who went tiny and then they left. They like moved into a bigger place, but I feel like they talked about like the experience was still really important for them. So like I don't think anyone's ever going to go tiny for like a few years and then like regret it. So I feel like I think that's really good advice that you don't have to have in your mind like I have to do this for the rest of my life. It's just, you know, be excited about what you can learn about it in the moment and, in the little time that you do it, and then just, keep going from there, because it's definitely going to open doors to other things, because everybody in this sort of movement in the community is so welcoming and so nice, and they want you to succeed and like do well and grow. Like you're going to meet really great people and like something awesome is going to come out of it. So I think it's totally worth it too. So yeah, I see your point there.
Yeah, you're totally right in that. And there's also the fear of like, or there's the idea of like, I need to have everything planned out, right? I've encountered that where it's like, okay, when I get to this point, I'm going to have this much. Maybe I'll have this much saved up, or I'll get rid of this much stuff. And sure, have a plan. There's nothing wrong with having a plan. But when your plan actually hinders you from getting it done, or your plan is like 2 or 3 years out, man, what are you even getting for breakfast tomorrow? You don't know that. I say, sometimes we can create a plan, and it actually hinders us and restricts us. And so oftentimes that long term plan, of creating so much safety and so much comfort is just because of fear, and I've seen people, sometimes it takes like a year to, they buy the bus and they work
Yep.
on it on the weekends, and then finally after a year they've got it, and then maybe they Airbnb their house while they go traveling on the bus, or maybe they end up, selling their house and just going full time. Um, but 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 I wouldn't let, a long term. I wouldn't have a long term. I wouldn't have a long term date. I would have a short term date. Stick to it, execute it, and expect mistakes. We're humans.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's great. And I appreciate you saying that. And I appreciate you taking the time to just sort of like chat with me and share your experience. Like I'm a big fan of what you've done with the book. So I'm excited to, just be here and get to chat with you. And I know that people are gonna get a lot out of your experience too, because people have different types of questions. So I'm sure that, there's someone watching that's wondering, and maybe they're on like close to going tiny, and this video helps them sort of like, just take the leap. So thank you so much again for taking time to chat with me. And, I'm happy to have you on the channel again as things continue to develop with you too. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Meg. Absolutely. And if anyone wants to contact me, they can. My Instagram is at Heavener with two R's at the end. So if they have any
All right.
questions or anything like that, happy to answer them.
Cool. And yeah, like links to your Instagram will be in the video description too. So they can always like click on that and check out what you're doing and follow you and keep up to date with all your different adventures. Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you for what you're doing for the community. It's
Yeah, of course.
it's great.
Thanks.
It's great to have a place where people can learn all this stuff.
Yeah, I think it's going really well too. So I appreciate you saying that. All right, that was my conversation with Brent. Thank you so much, Brent, for taking the time to chat with us. I feel like I learned so much, and it was just a really fun conversation. It's fun to talk about tiny house pictures, right? We all love the photos. Tons of channels here on YouTube just going through the pictures and the designs, and tons of new accounts popping up on Instagram all the time too. So it was really fun to sit down and talk to someone who decided to take all of that content, created their own social media around it, but then also approached by a publisher to create a book around just the content itself and just giving people a chance to see all the different designs, the different architecture, the different landscapes that people choose to put their tiny houses on. So I hope that you all found this really useful. If you have any questions, you just want to reach out to Brent, follow their journey, you can check out their Instagram. Link to their Instagram is in the video description here. And if you're new to the channel, as always, please do take time to subscribe. It helps me out a ton. Tap the notification bell so you find out when I drop new videos. I drop new videos every single week, and continue to keep watching. We're going to keep having some videos with people addressing different aspects of the tiny house movement. We'll keep delving into financing. We'll keep delving into different builders, locations where you can put your tiny house, new communities, people are going tiny. But I also want to know what you guys want to see. So if you have anything that you want me to talk about in like a video on my own, I can delve into a topic a little bit more. Drop that in the comments. If there's anyone that you think I should interview and you know anyone, let me know. Just drop that information in the comments. You can send me an email at makethingstiny@gmail.com. And as always, don't forget to think tiny. Thanks so much for watching, guys. See you in the next one.